Hello, my friends. Cheers to you wherever you are. I hope you are in good health and spirits wherever you are, and you're ready to get even more enlightened, right? And become even more familiar with the history of our ancestors and the ancient world, right? So remember that we were talking about the second millennium BCE, right? We talked about Egypt through the second millennium BCE. We talked about Middle Kingdom and New Kingdom Egypt, right? And we brought the history of Egypt to around 1200 BCE, right? We had talked about Mesopotamia, and we have brought the history of Mesopotamia also to around, say, well, we are behind in Mesopotamia. We're going to catch up on Mesopotamia, but we have covered the Akkadians, and we know that the Amorites are coming into Mesopotamia as well, right? In the second millennium BCE. But we also talked about the movements of new peoples and new populations in the turn of the century, turn of the millennium, right? Third to second millennium, of the movement of new peoples and peoples who brought with themselves new technologies, new languages into Anatolia and into the Fertile Crescent, right? And the most sort of remarkable example of empire building in the second millennium, right? That which is the age of land-based, extensive land-based empires, was of course the empire of Assyria, right? The history of which we brought to the new Assyrian period, going from 900 to 600 BCE already. So one other people that we want to talk about in this turn of the millennium context, right, is the arrival of Indo-Europeans, a new group of population. Now, yeah, we have not talked about Indo-Europeans thus far. We have talked about Egyptians, African and Sumerian and Semitic civilizations thus far. Now we're getting to a different kind of sort of cultural context, a different kind of people with languages and whatnot, coming also into this mixture, right, that is Western Asia and is becoming Egypt as well, right? And the second people are an Indo-European people called the Hittites, right? So if we wanted to sort of go back and look at our chronology here, right? If we make another column here, and we put on the top of it, okay, Anatolia, right? We see that we are talking about two groups of Indo-European populations. Indo-European populations, right, and Indo-European languages that are coming into Anatolia, i.e. they are butting, right, sort of territories to Syria and as we will see, Mesopotamia, they come and conquer, and also, as we will see, Egypt. So in this second millennium, the two population groups what we're dealing with are Hittites and Mitani, right? So Indo-European migrations, Indo-European speakers, right? We remember the movement of Indo-European speakers from this area north of the Black Sea, right? This is the most common understanding that of their original homes, right? And we might have been dealing with sort of climate conditions, excuse me, circa, even before of all of this, right? 7000 BCE, when people, begin to settle and whatnot, the settlements that we have over Black Sea, north of the Black Sea. There's a theory that there was Black Sea. There was an eruption of Black Sea because there was an eruption of Bosphorus, and therefore the water of Mediterranean poured into the Black Sea, leading to the spread of populations, and therefore eventually by 4000 BCE you have the Indo-Europeans also in migration, and by 2000 BCE, right, they come to Anatolia, right? And this is, if you will, this is, if you're talking about the north of Black Sea, right? And here is Black Sea. From the north of it, they come through Caucasus, right? And here is the map of Proto-Anatolian Indo-European migrations, right? Yeah, we see here Proto-Anatolians, right? And that come in, and here we see the Hittites, right? And you remember the city of Kanesh, that was a center of a trade network, right? And I remember that I asked you to pay attention to Hattusha, which is the capital of the Hatti, meaning the Hittites, right? And these are other the Luvians and the Pala, other Indo-Europeans, right? Communities that are migrating into Anatolia, right? So who was it that figured out that this group of population, right, is coming with a new language group, right, a new family of languages that was different than our sort of our Semitic languages, right, and our African languages, right? And well, that was a British, right? A British judge by the name of Sir William Jones, right? Who in the 18th century, right? Late 18th century, remember British are late 18th century in India here, right? The British, remember, by 1801 they are taking over Egypt, excuse me, they have taken over Egypt. So this is the colonial period, right? The British are beginning to establish the great empire that they had, and the remnant of which now is called the United Kingdom, right? The remnants of this colonial background are still included in the territories of United Kingdom, right? But anyway, Sir William Jones was studying ancient languages of India and South Asia. Where was he doing that? In India. In fact, his mausoleum is in India, right? Sir William Jones, the British Sir William Jones, he was studying Sanskrit, yeah, one of the ancient language of India specifically, late 18th century, and he realized that they have the same grammar and the same vocabulary as ancient Greek and Latin, right? There is a fantastic documentary that I've asked you to see about the discovery, about the Hittites and the discovery of these languages, right? That is fascinating, and I hope, and I'm sure you'll love it once you see it. Okay, anyway, that the Sir William Jones recognized that what is this coming from, and where is this coming from? That Sanskrit, the language of quote unquote subcontinent, right, is close to the same, all close to, the Germanic languages, the Celtic languages, old Persian languages, and so on and so forth. And then he realized that, well, lo and behold, we are talking about the same family of languages as we talked about before. This was supposed to be a picture of Sir William Jones, my friends. I'm sorry that I have um, sort of screwed up his photograph this way. But you see, he was a very handsome fellow actually, and unfortunately he passed away. He died young, also, right? So he is the one that, based on whose work, or finally we came up with the categorization of our Indo-European languages to Kentum and Satem, right? Okay, so these Hittites arrived circa 2000 BCE. They were conquerors who wanted to impose their language. So here you begin to get, right, the interconnections of two groups of languages that are carried by multiplicity of cultures, and therefore you have cultural integration and cultural contact. Yeah, the Hittites, in fact, they imposed their languages, right? And by 1700 BCE, they had sort of, just as the Assyrians had done from their nuclear sort of city-states of Ashur, right? The Hittites starts from their capital of Hattusha, right? And then they begin to integrate many city-states by 1700, and we call them the warrior aristocracy of the Bronze Age. Incidentally, as we will see, my friends, right, whatever that we've been talking about, right, circa 3000 BCE, right, up to 1200 BCE that we will pick up, right, that period of time, we are still in the Bronze Age, right, and the Hittites are the aristocracy of the Bronze Age, and they, as we will see, they will, excuse me, they will become the inaugurators of the Iron Age, right? Which starts circa 1200 BCE, right? So, okay, this is Hattusha, as you see, and these are the different city-states that you see, and this is the Hittite Empire, right, circa 600 BCE, right? This is the same Hittite Empire, circa 600 BCE, and these are the city-states, right, that the Hittites have come to control. Now, I wish to point out to you, most of you should know this by now, right, that Aleppo is now in Syria, right? And Egypt is coming up, has come up, yeah, or is coming up, right? And so you see that, for one thing, we will have to, the new kingdom Egypt, the imperial Egypt, right? Which was the second half of the second millennium, remember, BCE, right? The new kingdom Egypt also comes into contact with the Hittite Empire, right? Okay, so what did the Hittites do? The Hittites brought with them and adopted and adapted, yeah, the latest technologies, most of which, yeah, chariots needed to get lighter and lighter. Hittites eventually came to use iron for weaponry. They used cuneiform, right, to record their Indo-European languages. And in fact, it was precisely because of that they were able to decipher the Hittite language, as you will see in your documentary video. Like, okay, conquest, my friends, you cannot read my lips again, okay? But conquests are in search of resources. Let nobody tell you otherwise, okay? We invaded Iraq not because, ostensibly they were responsible for 9/11, which we know they weren't, right? The Saudis were, our good friend the Saudis were responsible for 9/11, right? In which, by the way, only 3,000 people, no, only, okay, I don't want to, you know what I mean. 3,000 people passed away, right? Compared to what? So compared to how many that we have passed away, have had uh, leave us during the past 6 months, right? So it was that. It was for that reason that we invaded Iraq. It was for access to resources that we invaded Iraq, and we fought with ISIS. And as Donald Trump said, we defeated, and we kept their oil. Yeah, yes, because the region that ISIS wanted to control, and this is where you get very smart when you know your ancient world is directly to the south of all these mountainous regions that we have been studying, right? To the north of Fertile Crescent. Yeah, north of Fertile Crescent was what the ISIS wanted to control. Why would they want to control there? Because that was one of the easiest roads, which you could with which you could connect northern Mesopotamia, i.e. Kurdistan area, right? Northern Mesopotamia with all its oil, right? You could connect northern Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean Sea in order to run your pipelines, right? Precisely where the ISIS had control, right? So the whole ISIS business, my friends, right? Now you know how smart you're getting, right? The whole ISIS business was the terrorism and whatnot, and the fact that the Saudis were sponsoring them and everything, and the Saudis are selling us oil and getting our money, and so on and so forth, our taxpayers' money, and so on and so forth, with which they make ISIS, and ISIS comes and destroys the region, right? And then we go in and destroy ISIS and the region, and then we take over their oil. Right. So in some senses, we're doing exactly what the Assyrians did, right? And what the Hittites wanted to do, and what all the empires, right, that indigenous empires of the regions wanted to do, i.e., have the control of resources, bring the control of their resources through their trade routes together, right, and create large scale empires. Now, why do we, why are we making all these itty bitty states, right, around the Gulf area, most of which are from 1970s onwards, right, UAE and Qatar, and yeah, Kuwait and whatnot. Yeah, my apologies to my Arab friends who are coming from our neighboring regions to Iran. My brethren and sisters from UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait. But you must know your history as well, and know that these creations, right, are basically the creations of post-World War II in Western Asia, right, and mostly at the hands of the new colonial peoples, right, and European countries. At any rate, that the Hittites came, they adopted, they brought with them new technologies, new chariots. The use of horses became very, like fit horses that could light horses and so forth and so on, yeah. And they use their own they use excuse me, cuneiform in order to render their own Hatti language, right? And they sought to control the trade routes, and by 1595 BCE they had captured Babylon, right? So you might guess what happens to Assyria in the meanwhile. We will see that Assyria, this is the period where Assyria contracts, right? Original Assyrian Empire contracts, right? So, but the expansion of the Hittites is stopped by yet another Indo-European people, the Mitani. Remember, we said that the Mitani, right? The Hittites come to, basically 1900 to 1179. But yeah, again, we're talking about expansion and contraction of empires during this period, my friends, right? And they come the Mitani and they take over part of Hittite territories and stop their expansion for a while, for a period of more than 2.5 centuries, right? And there we get another Indo-European group, right? And the Mitani advantage that comes in with the advantage of use of horses, yeah, and horse-drawn chariots, terrifying death machines, new cavalry tactics, and whatnot. Eventually, the Hittites win from the Mitani, right? And once they do that, right, once they incorporate the Mitani lands into their own, and they have, they have sort of made sure that Assyria has contracted. What do they do? Where do they go? Of course, to Egypt, right? Because here we are, right? This is the map that we get, right? Circa 1400 BC. You have your Hittites, right? You have your Mitani, and you see that you have your Egyptians, right? This is the new kingdom Egypt, of course, the expansionist, imperialist Egypt, of course. And I told you, my friends, keep in mind this city, the city of Kadesh, right? Keep this city in mind because it's an important city. Now, okay, don't complain. I'm going to make life even more complicated for you, right? Because life is complicated. There were different people, there were different groups, right? That have come together to this part of the world, right? In order to wait. What are we studying again? The history of Western civilization, right? Okay, so just just to refresh your memory, my friends, we are still in Africa and Asia, right? And it is now we have come to 1400 BCE. A millennium and a half has passed, and we are nowhere near the quote-unquote the West, or are we not? Yeah, that's the question. Yeah. Anyway, a new people comes into the picture. Why? What new people comes into? Yeah, where do they come from? Well, like Enkidu of Gilgamesh, right? They come down off the Zagros mountains, right? We don't know their origins, right? We don't know whether they're Indo-Europeans. We don't know whether they are Semitic. They're probably not Semitic because they're coming on from the east, right? But their language is an isolate language, but they come and rule over a prosperous Babylonia for 500 years. So, circa 1400 BCE, my friends, this is before the Hatti have taken over Mitani, right? The Kassites are there, the Mitani are there, the Egyptians are there, and the Hittites are there, right? Important, major, and then of course the Assyrians are still here, and we know full well, right, that they're going to rise again. In fact, they're going to take over all of this, right? All of this they're going to take over circa 900 BCE, remember? Yeah, including Eastern Mediterranean and the land of Canaan and what becomes Judea and Israel, right? Okay, but circa 1400 BCE, we still have a way to go. 1400 BCE, yeah, this is the picture of Western Asia and Egypt. Connections, 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 right? Mesopotamian civilization, Egyptian Old Kingdom, Egyptian New Kingdom, right? Mitani, the Semites, the Sumerians. Imagine the collective knowledge that has been garnered thus far. Imagine the studies of astronomy. Imagine the study of mathematics. Imagine what the Assyrians did, right? And they created catalogs of the names of plants and the names of animals. And I tell you, imagine, right? Because they did it, right? And they created, right, libraries, yeah, with remember thousands and thousands of books as far as the Assyrians are concerned. Well, the Hittites didn't do that, you think? Well, we'll think again, think back again, and we'll get to it in a second. Yes, the Hittites accumulated all this knowledge, right? Yeah, sciences are cumulative, my friends, right? Cumulative, right? You build little by little, right? It does not happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight, right? There's a context to everything, right? Including our current day predicament, right, my friends? So, now, having known that, right, this is again our 14th century, except that BCE, except that now we have our Assyrian Empire as well, right? And we see that Assyrian Empire has sort of contracted, right? And the Mitani have taken its place, right? And you see that the Kassites are now in Babylonia, and of course these are Hittites and New Kingdom Egypt. Okay, so moving on. Excuse me, my friends. Sometimes, okay. We talked about this. Okay, so gradually, right? Assyria, as we talked about. The Hittite Empire, right? Pushes Assyria aside, right? Takes over the territory of Mitani, right? And comes down and butts courses with Egypt, and we talked about these are duplicates, right, of our slides, and circa 1200 BCE, yeah, when the Hittites have won from the Egyptians at the Battle of Kadesh, and they go on to conquer Egypt as well, right? And they become the after the Hyksos, right? the second group, right? So it is the Hyksos, the Hittites, 1750 Hittites. The let's see what is the date of Battle of Kadesh, my friends. Bear with me 1 second. We go here and then here. Okay, here we say Battle of Kadesh, and we see that it was 1274 BCE, right? So we could 12. Okay. What did I say, my friends? What was the date? 1274. 1274, right? 1274. Hittites against the Egyptians, right? I mean, invasion of the Hittites, and then the invasions of Assyria, right? Which was, if we remember, well, it was anyway in the period 900 to 600 BCE, and lo and behold, later on come the Persians. But we have not dealt with them yet. Yeah? Okay, my friends, so 1200s is the beginning of Iron Age, right? I mean, all the fantastic achievements of the Hittites, including the fact that, like the Assyrians, like all the people that had come before them, they had accumulated all this knowledge in tremendous libraries, right? The Hittites, right? And all of this was partly because of the fact that they were one of the first ones to use the Iron Age, to start using iron, right? In their weaponry, in their everyday for their everyday needs and for multitude of purposes, right? So and we are now in this part of the world, we are already in the Iron Age, right? In Western Asia and in Egypt, we begin to get into Iron Age. This does not mean that, Western Eurasia, that Western Eurasia was also during the same age, right? I mean, different regions go through these ages at different periods, right? Depending on how advanced their technology and their use of metals has become, right? So anyway, the 1200s inaugurates the Iron Age, but it starts with a series of upheavals, with the movements of peoples and populations, and with the attack of the Sea People, the people that we know as the Sea People, which we think maybe might have been might be the Phoenicians. We don't know, right, precisely the identity of these Sea People. So it is an age in upheaval, right? But it, of course, it ushers into yet newer political and scientific and cultural advances, right? And the accumulation of the knowledge and the sciences of the ancestors of our Iron Age our Iron Age ancestors, right? So I bid you farewell here, my friends. I am going to stop here with our Hittite lecture, and I will pick up the lecture on, the Phoenicians, and we're moving into the Mediterranean Sea now a little bit, right? And the Minoans, right? Which you remember already, the Assyrians and the Hittites, and well, we will see the Phoenicians and all of that, right? There is this interconnection with what becomes eventually ostensibly Europe, right? I mean, and look at this, Greece, and then here you will have Italy, and you see how close Greece is to Western Asia. In fact, if you recall your Pangea, you see that the Aegean, right, has pushed in, and sort of these two areas have been separated, right, from each other through the Aegean Sea. So you see the way Greece looks to the east, right? And we're going to come into the civilization that is kind of connected with the Greek civilization on some level, but we know where the precedent, we have already set out the precedent for you. So I will pick up in the next lecture. Thank you, my friends, for listening to me, and I hope you have learned. Again, you are one step ahead of everyone. Take care. Bye.